We're back on the Thicc podcast, and today we have got a bunch to talk about. New rule changes, some drama in the women's NBA, which we may or may not touch on at the end of the program, but the flagship topic, we'll be talking about quarterback. Shock. We'll be talking about the four teams who do not have a set quarterback rolling into the year, that being the Cleveland Browns, the Indianapolis Colts, the New Orleans Saints, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And in honor of Jim Irsay, moment of silence. We'll start with the Indianapolis Colts. And it's a three-way battle, really a two-way battle between Daniel Jones, Riley Leonard, and Anthony Richardson. And the easy answer is to say, give Richardson the job. He's the hyper-athletic phenom. If he works out, he'll be the best quarterback in the league. If he can just complete 65% of his passes and can stop making the worst throws known to mankind, he'll be great. I don't think he should be given the job. I think he should really have to earn it and be a decisively better passer. Not just a better athlete, not just a better runner, not just a better quarterback in totality, but a better passer than Daniel Jones in training camp, assuming Riley Leonard doesn't come in there and light the world on fire. You need to be better than Daniel Jones dropping back and throwing the ball. It's just the way things are. Jones was not a good quarterback last year. Part of that is on the offensive line. Part of that is on the receivers he was throwing to. But Jones just could not complete anything. He was dealing with a neck injury. His lower body's been all out of whack ever since that knee injury. He's just not that guy. If you cannot confidently beat him out for the starting job, you should begin the season on the bench. Going to the bench has helped a lot of quarterbacks over the years. Last year helped Bryce Young out tremendously. Maybe the first 2-3 whole month even of the season on the bench could change Richardson's perspective. And if not, if he still can't throw a football, it's time to move on.
I don't care if Daniel Jones looks better. I don't care if Riley Leonard is in their offseason program lighting the world on fire. You cannot start Anthony Richardson on the bench to start the season. We have been through that already. If the message hasn't gone through his head that he needs to be a better passer, giving more effort, then I don't know if it ever will. And if you start with Daniel Jones, if Daniel Jones of all players beats him out in training camp, you're signaling to the rest of the NFL, to your fan base, that you're moving on from your fourth overall pick, Anthony Richardson. You are no longer going to try to develop him. Because at this point, if you're willing to move off of him for Daniel Jones, the disaster that he is, or a sixth-round rookie quarterback, you don't have faith in him. He needs more reps in order to improve. He's still extremely young. He didn't have a lot of reps in college. He's been injured in the NFL, doesn't have a lot of reps in the NFL. So I think it would just be them giving up on him. They're signaling they're willing to trade him for a sixth or late round pick if he's not the day one starter.
Yeah, that's a novel concept, except for the fact that Frank Wright is coaching for his job and every single win is going to matter. And if Daniel Jones gives you a better shot at winning, one, Richardson stinks. He stunk last year. If he doesn't progress to the point where Jones is not beating him out, you're coaching for your job. You're not worried about, okay, let me develop Anthony Richardson for the next 2-3 years. You are in win now mode, or you are gone, and the future of Richardson does not matter. The front office is probably gone if Richardson doesn't work out. I just would not automatically give it to anyone particular. That's a stupid way of approaching things. Let the better man win it in camp, and if you really can't be better than Daniel Jones, you should be moved on from.
If Anthony Richardson starts the season and is at least solid, or they find out a bit into the season that he's not truly the answer, and you move on to one of the backups, whether it is Daniel Jones, whether Riley Leonard leaves a big enough impression on the coaching staff in the first year of his career to earn a starting spot, and then you win some more games and you're hovering around the 6 to 8 win mark, then I don't think it's a guarantee that Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard are booted out of the building. But if you admit that Anthony Richardson was a failure, you don't even give him another opportunity at the beginning of the year to be your starting quarterback, and your immediate first move is to move to Daniel Jones because he gives you the best chance to win, and then you only win 6 games, you're getting fired immediately, no questions asked.
If you're winning 6 games with Daniel Jones, at some point Richardson is going to come onto the field, and they're not going to roll Daniel Jones when they start 2-5. We'll see Richardson, and then we'll see why, okay, maybe it was the right choice to keep him on the bench. Realistically, the most upside from what we've seen so far, I'm not going to say it's Riley Leonard. I really want to say it's Riley Leonard. I'd like to have him have a go. Realistically, him and potentially Richardson should transition to being wide receivers or tight ends. We start with Daniel Jones at quarterback, and then if something that goes wrong there, you roll out Jason Bean, who I think is the 4th string quarterback. Yes, Jason Bean, and you keep Richardson and Riley Leonard at tight end. That's the idea that people are not ready to talk about. You've already got 3 great wide receivers. You just drafted Tyler Ward. Forget putting offensive linemen on the field. You lost Fries and Kelly to free agency. roll with Quentin Nelson and 2 offensive tackles, get as many skill players on the field as possible. If 2 of them are quarterbacks, so be it.
I just don't see that happening. I think Anthony Richardson needs to be the day one starter. I think he will be the day one starter. And I hope we can see some improvement from him, because the highs we see from him are extremely exciting. It just the lows happen 93%
Yeah, the highs we saw
of the
from
time.
Daniel Jones, the first 80 or so yards of that long run he had were fantastic. That's the part of this we're not even considering in the slides. But Daniel Jones has a Sam Darnold-esque reawakening behind the best offensive line that's ever been around, with better receivers than he's had the entirety of his career, with a really high-level tight end, which he never had in New York. But that's still a very good running back. Not on the level of Saquon Barkley, certainly. What if Daniel Jones blossoms and becomes like a 3.5, 4,000-yard passer with a little bit of zest on the ground? Then Dable gets fired immediately. Like, leaving aside the Colts, if Daniel Jones goes into successful elsewhere, Dable is out of a job. So is Joe Shea.
That is a good sidebar. If Daniel Jones is that guy in Indianapolis and finds his way under the field, whether it be winning the job in training camp or an Anthony Richardson injury or Anthony Richardson sucking, if he succeeds, that it does not bode well for the Giants front office, well, coaching staff primarily.
Really, nothing bodes well for anything in New York. Bouncing on over to another new though, the New Orleans Saints are a more interesting case in my opinion. They got Jake Haener, who realistically is not going to see the field barring 2 injuries. They've got Spencer Rattler, who has some athletic upside, but did not perform all that well in what we saw of him as a rookie. And we've got Tyler Shuck, who was drafted in the 2nd round. I think it's between Rattler and Shuck, clearly. Similar to how I felt with Bo Nix as a rookie, if you were going to use early draft capital, a top 40 pick on Tyler Shuck, and he isn't your day one starter as a 25-year-old, and he's not able to beat out Spencer Rattler, that bodes very, very poorly for him. That means he may not have a long NFL career. He may be Arch Manning's backup by this time next season. So I think Shuck is the answer here, but I'd like to see Rattler. I think Rattler got a bad shake of things last year. By the time he came in, all the Saints' star wide receivers and offensive weapons off the field. Their O-line was banged up. He was getting crushed in the pocket, and he was a rookie quarterback. In a perfect world, he gets a better shot, gets to be behind 2 decent tackles, have his full triumvirate of wide receivers in front of him, get Alvin Kamara able to squeeze the last little bit of juice out of him, and he earns himself some long-term money. Maybe not as a starter, but as a backup, but I think they're going to give it to Shuck.
Well, before we started recording this morning, Jake Haener reportedly has an oblique injury, so that's not going to help him anymore as far as being the Saints starting quarterback. And I understand it's been reported that it's kind of an open quarterback competition between the 3 quarterbacks, but when you have Jake Haener, a late round pick who Kellen Moore did not draft, you have Spencer Rattler, a late round pick who Kellen Moore did not draft, and you have Kellen Moore who played quarterback. He has coached several successful quarterbacks in the NFL, and we see him bet on someone who's going to be a 26-year-old rookie quarterback in Tyler Shuck in the 2nd round. That signals that he thinks he can harness Tyler Shuck's strengths and can develop him into an NFL starting quarterback. So I don't think it's really a question. The fact that Kellen Moore drafted this old of a rookie quarterback in the 2nd round signals he wants him to be his day one starter in his first year as a head coach. So I would be very surprised if it is either of the other 2.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree. The thing with Shuck, I feel bad for him because he is going to unfairly have a lot of hate directed his way thanks to being drafted substantially above Shedeur Sanders. Really, he was the, oh man, how did this pick happen at quarterbacks? People still thought Shedeur was going early in the 2nd round, and all that negativity has kind of been lumped on Shuck. If he struggles early in his career, he is going to get crucified by the fans, by the media. It's not going to be a good show, but I do think he is going to be the guy.
I think he's going to get more hate just because he's a 2nd round, the 9th pick of the 2nd round. If he was the 9th pick of the 3rd round, you might be looking at not as much criticism.
Yeah, really. Cam Ward's going to get criticized if he doesn't succeed. That's going to be more so 1st overall pick. Jackson Dart and Shuck are going to bear the brunt of the negative media attention just based off where they went, being more eyes on them if they don't succeed day one. Speaking of succeeding day one, Will Howard very well could be the Steelers' starting quarterback as things stand right now. It's between him, Mason Rudolph, and the allure of Aaron Rodgers, who has until July 20th to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers before training camp really kicks off. This is not an ideal quarterback situation by any means. Will Howard, very big, athletic, at least for a college standard. I don't think he's going to be that special of an athlete in the NFL if he does wind up seeing the field. Mason Rudolph, less athletic, still got a bit of an arm on him, and has an 8-3 record as the Steelers' starting quarterback over the years. Does that mean anything in terms of his ability to win the job in camp over Howard? Probably. He's got experience in the system. He's been with Tomlin before. It'll be his first year with an Arthur Smith-led offensive system. How that'll go for him, who's to say? But he's not really a quarterback who is going to shoot you in the foot, but he's definitely not raising your ceiling. If Rodgers comes into camp and doesn't suffer another torn Achilles, he's going to be the starting quarterback. If he doesn't, I think it's going to be Howard, or I think it's going to be Rudolph rather. I have a really hard time seeing Howard have a path to that job, barring injury. I think Skylar Thompson, day one, might even be a better option than Will Howard.
I'm not convinced that Aaron Rodgers is going to sign with the Steelers because Aaron Rodgers seemingly will do whatever he wants to do. And if he does not feel like playing for the Steelers, if he decides he doesn't feel like playing football or that they don't really have a chance at being anything interesting next year, I don't think we're going to see him sign with them. But what makes me a little inclined to believe that he will be the Steelers' day one starter is that they scheduled the Jets week one. And the fact that they have that as their week one matchup.
Let's clear this up. They is not the Steelers, the NFL. So the NFL at least thinks it's going to be a Rodgers Steelers-led offense. The NFL doesn't know squat about squat, though.
That is what I'm getting onto there. If the NFL is scheduling that, it feels like they may have some inclination that he's going to sign with the Steelers. But if that is not the case, I definitely think Rudolph should be the Steelers' day one quarterback. The first few weeks of the season are a little rough, and then they do have a week 5 bye after going international. So I think if Mason Rudolph is able to get a win or something going there, great. But if he does not, after that bye week, maybe that's when you slide in the more athletic Will Howard. You'd get to play the Browns and the Bengals defense, so I think that would be a good opportunity to slide the rookie in if they have to early in the season.
Putting Will Howard out there under center feels like punting on the season to me, if I'm being brutally honest. I tried to talk myself into it. I tried to be nice. The best thing you can say about Will Howard is he was a slightly above average athlete as a game manager. You compare him to the other athletes in the NFL. Let's just look around the AFC North when we're talking about athletes. Excluding the Browns, because we'll get to them in a second, clearly Lamar is a better athlete. Joe Burrow, I think, has a better arm and has better scrambling ability than Will Howard. Once I actually start running, Howard's better at that. But the NFC North, Caleb Williams, Jordan Love, J.J. McCarthy, all better athletes. Jared Goff, who's a hyper-accurate pocket passer. He's like a tier 3, tier 4 athlete with very low upside and low processing ability. So I think they're going to ride it out with Rudolph as long as they can. Rudolph has had injury history in the past, some really bad concussions, so maybe that's what gets him out of there. And then I still think they put Skylar Thompson if it's early enough in the year, but he's a 5th-round pick. There is no guarantee he ever sees the field, let alone as a rookie. And that might be pure Michigan biased against Will Howard. Granted, I watched him put up 10 points against Big Blue at the Horseshoe, so I don't really mind Will Howard that much.
He could see the field just because if they don't get Aaron Rodgers, which it feels like they expect that they will, they may be willing to just punt on the season, see what they have in a rookie quarterback rather than going with Mason Rudolph, where you know your floor will be higher than that with Will Howard, but you know your ceiling's also not going to be that high.
This team won, 10 games with Kenny Pickett under center. They're not punting on the season. They're not doing that. They would have to get permission from the higher-ups to fully punt on the season so Mike Tomlin can finally have an elite quarterback of his own besides Ben Roethlisberger. That's not happening, though. Finally, we've got the Cleveland Browns, who are certainly the messiest QB room. Reports have come out that Deshaun Watson is apparently throwing with the team and may make a late-season comeback. If I was the Browns, I would revoke his credentials, take his key card, lock the doors, turn the lights out, and pretend nobody was home. I would just get him as far away from the team as possible and keep it with the 4 quarterbacks they currently have on their roster. But conceivably, Watson is in play for the non-existent playoff push in November, December. But right now, it's Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders. This is the one I'm truly stumped on. I think Flacco's probably the best bet to start week 1 because I think Kenny Pickett really just isn't that guy. But you cannot tell me there's a clear-cut winner here. Maybe it's the 3rd-round pick Dylan Gabriel. Maybe it's the 5th-round pick Shedeur Sanders. Maybe it's the former 1st-round pick in Kenny Pickett. None of these guys are good at football at the NFL level. Let's be brutally honest. Flacco is the closest to being good. He had some success in his last stint as the Browns starting quarterback. But when he played on the Colts with a much better offensive line with better receivers, looked terrible last season. So I don't think
statistical production wasn't that bad.
You know, if we're going to be
Better than Kenny Pickett's last year, who played on the Eagles.
Hey, Kenny Pickett was there for the final play of the Super Bowl. He finished off the Kansas City Chiefs by kneeling that ball down. So maybe you value that, a winning quarterback, if you will. But I don't know. I don't think it's going to be either of the rookies day one. And if it is, I think that is a testament more so to how bad the people in front of them are as opposed to how great they are.
I expect Kenny Pickett to get cut before the beginning of the season because if these reports with Deshaun Watson out of a boot, throwing at the Browns facility with teammates have any legs to them, and there's a possibility of him, if his desire is there to want to play and he's healthy enough to play late in the season, and then you may have that potentially come into the picture.
I mean, he's not going to get cut before week one, though. They can put Watson on the IL and cut Pickett to activate him. Like, he's not going to get cut before the season starts. Watson is not
going on the IR. Aren't you on the IR for the entire season?
There is some injury list you can get put on where you're not, you can be activated off it. Like, they're not going to cut Pickett. They're not going to carry Watson on the roster.
Even if you leave Watson out of the picture and think he's no way he's going to come into play, I still think they're going to, you tell me they're going to carry 4 quarterbacks on the roster? I just don't see that happening. I think they're going to pick between Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett to be the veteran quarterback on the roster. And I think Joe Flacco at this point in his career, even with Kenny Pickett being younger, he's just a better quarterback. He looked bad last year with the Colts in some moments, but he also has some flashes where he harnesses where he uses his big arm, is able to push the ball down the field, and executes an NFL offense because he's been in the league for so long. Kenny Pickett just isn't really capable of doing that. Not as physically gifted as Joe Flacco, not as good of a passer, and he does not have experience in the Stefanski system like Joe Flacco does. So I think they're going to go with Joe Flacco, who's also easier to move off of if you want to decide to go with a rookie later in the season. And then I think it's between Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders after that, whichever one is looking better in camp, whichever one is looking better in practices. And we'll see one of them this year, I think, because you have to find out what one of them looks like.
Well, maybe you don't have to. Maybe you reinvent yourself as a Wildcat offense with Jerome Ford, Quinshon Judkins, and Dylan Sampson all taking turns at the quarterback position. Surely one of those guys can throw the football. They're going to have to get creative in Cleveland. Shedeur, realistically, is the best rookie quarterback on the roster. All due respect to Dylan Gabriel, probably is better served to be a backup. No one's disputing that. If one of those guys can come in and make big improvements and be NFL ready, it is Shedeur. The processing is there. The ability to scan the field is there. It just needs to be accelerated a whole lot, and he needs to stop trying to play Mahomes hero ball. If they can coach those bad habits out of him, Shedeur is probably the best quarterback on the roster, but they're not going to be able to coach those habits out of him by week one. Maybe by Thanksgiving we see him get a shot, but we're speaking purely of early season stuff. We're gonna get.
You're the one saying Shedeur is better than Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, no, me and everyone else. Maybe Gabriel gets the start. I got no issue with Dylan Gabriel. Led his team to a Big Ten championship, an undefeated season until the college football playoffs, where things didn't quite go his way because of a devilish 1-month bye. If only that bye didn't exist, the Oregon Ducks would be the national champions, but I digress. Anything else you'd like to say about quarterbacks?
Not exactly.
Not exactly. I don't like talking about these quarterbacks much anyway. These are a bunch of jabronis.
Well, we got the tush push now. That has to deal with quarterbacks.
The tush push is always fun, and the tush push will be sticking around at least for one more season. 22 of the NFL's 32 owners did vote to ban it, but they need a 75% majority to get that thing railroaded through, so they were 2 votes away. I always find it funny when the people who defend the tush push say, oh, it's a great football play, yada, 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 when in reality, it's really not. It's a rugby play. It's aesthetically unpleasing. It takes the suspense out of 3rd and 4th down. And some teams actually do run as well as the Eagles. When Jacoby Brissett was under center for the Browns a few years ago and they ran the tush push, they had a similar level of success as the Eagles did this season. So stylistically, it's a replicatable play, and I think that is going to be what eventually gets it banned, because as more teams start to do it with tight ends, with running backs, with larger body quarterbacks, and consistently pick up 4th and shorts, 3rd and shorts 80% of the time, then it's going to become clearer and clearer that it's not just some strength of the offensive line, strength of the quarterback, but it is a broken play to a certain extent. Now, do I think the Eagles should be punished for coming up with it? They should lose the rights to it? No. I'd feel worse about it inevitably getting banned if the Eagles hadn't just won the Super Bowl, but they've kind of gotten their cake here. And the Eagles are the best at it in the NFL, sure, but it's not solely because they've got the great offensive line, the great quarterback. Their success is partially due to the play itself. It is impossible to stop 1,000 pounds of pure meat going straight at you.
In theory, I've always been on the side of the tush push should not be banned. Why are we punishing teams that happen to be elite at it just because other teams in the NFL cannot do it at a high level? Intellectually, when you think of it like that, it doesn't make that much sense to just punish one team. But after hearing more discussion around it surrounding this time after it was going up for a vote, I've kind of moved to the perspective, I don't really care whether it's banned or whether it is not banned, because I don't think it has as large of effect on the outcomes of games as people are giving it credit for, specifically when it comes to the Eagles. Shocker. The team with the best offensive line, the best wide receiver duo, the best running back, the best defense, and a top 10 quarterback won the Super Bowl. They didn't need the tush push to make that happen. On the Buffalo Bills side of things, the team that is the second best in the NFL at doing the tush push, it didn't get them to the Super Bowl. Evidently, the reason they didn't make it to the Super Bowl was because they did not have a strong defense against the run. And once one of their starting quarterbacks went down against the Chiefs, they were not able to guard all of the Chiefs' receivers.
Look, I will say, jumping in there, it's a little richer using the Bills as an example. And I agree with you to a certain extent. They didn't make the Super Bowl because of their defense. But they did kind of use a tush push, which very controversially did pick up the first down, but was ruled short of the first down.
Well, it did not pick up the first down.
It picked up the first down. The ball crashed a lot. It got a rule change push through, as is customary, following a Bills playoff loss to the Chiefs. So
but my point being is, I don't think it significantly impacts the outcome of games to the extent that people hate the Eagles thinks it does. The Eagles still would have been really good. The Bills still would have been really good. The Bills have one of the most physically dominant quarterbacks in NFL history. He still would run the ball at a high level. Same goes for Jalen Hurts. If the tush push part of the play didn't exist, I'm sure he would still be a very successful quarterback at quarterback sneaks. And if that part doesn't exist, you probably have the best running back in the NFL, Saquon Barkley, running behind the best offensive line in the NFL with more goal line touches and a couple more touchdowns. So I've moved to the point where I don't really care if it's banned or if it is not banned, because it is not going to drastically affect how good a team is.
I feel like you're using some bad faith arguments. Having the ability to run the tush push at a high level means you are no longer starting every drive off 1st and 10. You're starting it off 1st and 9. You're getting an extra yard for free, essentially. You're getting an extra 2 yards for free, depending on how you want to use it on 3rd and 4th down, how bold you feel like being if you're willing to do a tush push deep in your own territory. The Eagles definitely play around the ability to pick up 1 yard at any given time. Jalen Hurts didn't just walk into those 20 rushing touchdowns or however many he had over the course of the regular season and the playoffs. The Eagles were game planning around that. I think more teams are going to game plan and excessively drill into their team the ability to do the tush push. Now, speaking about why people wanted it banned, the injury risk Green Bay brought forth, I think, is a little bit valid. No individual player got injured on the play, yes, but it's not good for the players' brains. It's not good for the centers' backs. Jalen Hurts always seems to be banged up at the end of the season ever since they started doing the tush push. I kind of think it's because they shove him in a hydraulic press 5 or 6 times a game. We're not going to have any answers to how bad it is for the brains of the centers until Kelsey and Juergens donate their brains to science in 40 years. But I do think it's kind of obvious it's not great for player health. I think the people saying, well, technically no players got injured on this year are being disingenuous.
I think with all the research on subconcussive blows being a larger contributing factor to CTE, and then looking at a play where the offensive line is just smashing their heads into the defensive line and the defensive line smashing their heads into the offensive line, it clearly poses a larger risk to players' health. And people bring up, I saw the argument made, what's stopping a team from running it on every single play? The amount of physical toll it takes on an offensive line and team to run a 2-yard play over and over again, your team would be cooked by the end of the game from a stamina perspective.
Yeah, the 53-man roster is what's stopping you from running it every single play. Like,
well,
the limitations.
Even if they're not getting injured.
You and me will be snapping the ball by the end of the season.
Even if they weren't getting injured, there's no way a person's body would be able to sustain that over, at that point, it'd probably be 140 snaps on offense.
I imagine you let the clock run down a little bit in between snaps. I don't think you're no-huddle tush pushing. I also think it's worth noting you can no longer push defenders into the line. That was deemed as a safety concern in 2013, in large part due to the concussive blow issue. So if it's an issue for the defensive players who don't have the snap count to do it, why is it not an issue for the offense to do it, who has a snap count, who's hitting a motionless target, which is seemingly at a more of a disadvantage, is going to be getting contact dictated on their head, hitting them before they can really push back into it. It feels a little unfair, because you conceivably could stop the tush push by just having Vita Vea and the linebacker right behind him and just cramming him into the Eagles center, but you're not allowed to do that. So it's kind of the two-way street thing as well. Like, is it safe for the offense to push players in? And if it's safe for the offense, why can't the defense do it? And so on and so forth. So it's a bit of inconsistency in the rules as well.
I think we'll probably see it.
It's getting banned in the next 2 off seasons. No doubt
agree.
about it. 2 votes away. Someone is going to change their mind. The Lions voted to keep it around after the Eagles tush push 17 times against Detroit when they play them this year, or the Eagles make it back to the Super Bowl, play the Ravens, and beat them on a walk-off tush push late in the fourth quarter. Ravens also voted to keep the play around. Their ownership is going to change their mind. The vote's going to come forward again, and it's going to get banned.
Well, I think part of it, the Eagles are coming off of a Super Bowl, so do we really want the excuse hanging out there? The reason the Eagles didn't repeat is because the tush push was banned? That would have been an annoying narrative to deal with.
Yeah, it's also, speaking of narratives, it's somewhat funny that only one team on the Eagles schedule voted to keep the tush push around. The other 12 voted to get rid of it. Man, you look at the teams who voted to keep it around, it's either good teams in the AFC, the Lions, or just absolute bottom feeders who wanted it around. The Patriots, the Dolphins, the Saints,
the Browns.
The Browns. The Browns are football terrorists, as we discussed, based off the contracts they've given out to Myles Garrett, Deshaun Watson. The Browns just want to watch the world burn. They're not good people in that building. As the Browns mayor says, the Cleveland mayor says, not the Browns mayor, they care about a lot more than the Browns in that city. They care about destabilizing the entire league. Speaking of destabilizing the league, the Lions withdrew their proposal to reseed the playoffs, which everyone's a fan of. The reason that proposal got floated in the first place is because Detroit undoubtedly had their best season ever, 15 wins. And if they had lost their Week 18 game, they would have had to go on the road and play a team as a wild card. That thought probably stuck in their craws a little bit. There was probably some complaining and whining about that. But looking back on it with a little bit more space, I think they realized, okay, our current system makes the division games more important. We're great right now. We're never going to have to go on the road in the first round. We're all right with things. So I think they pulled back a little bit from that. I don't think that vote would have passed either way.
I think that's why they removed it, because I think too many teams value their divisional I think too many teams value those division rivalries too much. They realize how much fan bases value division rivalries, and if you start to remove the importance of winning the division because you could be the 7th seed at that point, you're going to have people start caring less about divisional matchups late in the season or even week 1 like we're getting this year. And I also think teams would never vote it out because you never know when it is going to benefit you. Your division eventually could become the bottom feeder where you're the best of the bottom feeders and you win the division with 8 or 9 wins. And you don't know when that's going to happen. We've seen the NFC East be horrible in years past. Now it's really good again. We've seen the NFC North, with the exception of the Aaron Rodgers-led Packers, not be that great. Now they're the best division in football. So you don't know when it's going to hurt you 5 years down the line. You don't know when it's going to benefit you 5 years down the line.
Realistically, every NFC and AFC South team would have voted against that because that would have guaranteed them a road playoff trip despite winning the division.
In recent history, none of those teams would want that to be the case. So I don't think we'll ever see it passed because you never know when it's going to benefit you, and those divisional rivalries are so important to narratives, to the fans, that I don't think it'll ever happen.
The NHL, the NBA, and the NFL all have divisional rivalries depending on playoff seeding, stuff like that. The NBA doesn't, and you cannot tell me what the divisions are in the NBA. No, the casual fan has no idea who is in the Central Division of the Eastern Conference, but they can tell you who's in pretty much every division of the NFL. So it's just a value thing. It's a branding thing. It's a rivalry thing. There's no good rivalries in the NBA, which is really the only sport which has gone away from the division format. So it's never going to happen. Devaluing the divisions is a terrible, terrible mistake, and I'm glad the NFL owners did not walk into it.
That has been this week's podcast. Let us know what you think about the 4 teams we named. Who's going to start at quarterback for them? What do you think about the tush push not getting banned? What do you think about the Lions withdrawing their playoff seeding proposal? Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.